excited. Welcome to the On Fire Show. This is the host, Daryl M, and I have a very special guest introducing Representative Curt Weldon. All right. How you doing, Curt?
Great to be with you, Daryl. Philadelphia guy, and I'm from the Philadelphia area, so it's good to be with you.
Southwest
Thanks for
Philly, Baltimore Avenue.
Yeah, I'm from Marcus Hook, which is about 20 miles south of Philly, right on the Delaware River, across from Paulsboro.
Awesome. You know, when I saw you on the Tucker Carlson show, it was exciting, but a great disappointment about what happened to you and the 9/11 Commission and what they did to you and your family. That was one of the, a sad story in history, and I brought you on because I wanted to talk to you about it. I had talked to some other ones, and they said, you got to have this guy on. He's the number one guy, especially dealing with the 9/11 Commission. So we're going to talk about this. You were a congressman from 1987 to 2006, Armed Services Committee, vice chair of the House of Homeland Security Committee. What was that like around that time of 9/11? What was your thinking? What did you feel like when you saw the towers fell?
Well, you have to understand that before I went to Congress, I'm a teacher by profession, and I was a fire chief in my hometown. I'm a firefighter, volunteer, and was county commissioner in Delaware County before I went to Congress. So everything about my experience in Congress was a build-up on what I did before that. As a firefighter and a fire chief, when I went to Congress, I worked all the issues of disasters. And I formed the Fire and EMS caucus in the Congress in my first term. That caucus became the largest in the Congress with 370 members of the House and Senate. My co-chairs were Al Gore, John McCain, Joe Biden, Steny Hoyer. And so I was the point person for our 2 million firefighters across the country, paid and volunteer. And I would go to disasters when they occurred to learn lessons about how we could help them. In fact, when I was the fire chief of my hometown, before I was mayor, I was the assistant fire chief on the largest fire in America, the collision of two tankers at the port of my hometown that killed 28 people. That's the fire on the front cover of that magazine.
Oh, wow.
I wrote the article, and I testified before Congress when I was in my 20s on maritime fire safety. So I'm a firefighter, first of all, and a politician, second. And in 1993, the Trade Center was bombed for the first time. The fire commissioner in New York was Howard Safir. And he and the New York firefighters invited me to come up and spend a day at the Trade Center to see what happened. So I went up both as a congressman and as a firefighter and spent the day going through the garage where we had been attacked. And that's when I met a young rising officer in the New York City Fire Department by the name of Ray Downey. He'd become one of my best friends. Ray and I talked about how we could protect against another attack like the 93 attack. And I became very friendly with the fire department in New York and worked very closely with them. In fact, I still am very close. The current chief, John Esposito, is a good friend of mine. In fact, this jacket I'm wearing was given to me by Ray Downey. On 9/11, Ray Downey was the chief of all rescue in New York, and he was killed overseeing the 343 firefighters that were vaporized when the towers came down. I felt it a personal responsibility because while representing all the firefighters in America in the 90s, I was the oversight chairman of all the taxpayer funding that was providing our intelligence for our military and the services which were building information dominance centers to prevent against attacks and to understand terrorism. The Army and your friend that you know, Tony Shaffer, were involved in a top secret program at Fort Belvoir. These 25 people were tasked by the chairman of our Joint Chiefs of Staff, Hugh Shelton, in a very top secret program to bring together information from our 33 classified systems of the federal government, that's how many we have, and open source information. to give us an idea of where the next terrorist attacks might occur. And because that was a big problem with the 93 attack, Fire Chief Ray Downey and I made the recommendation to the Gilmore Commission in 1997-98, and I wrote the Gilmore Commission legislation, that we should have a fusion center of all of our intelligence, 33 classified systems and open source information, using the model established by the Able Danger team. And on November the 4th of 1999, 2 years before 9/11, the Deputy Secretary of Defense under Clinton, whose name was John Hamre, supported me. And he said, Congressman, it's a great idea. We need this. He said, but you've got to convince the FBI and the CIA to let us use their raw data because they're the biggest agencies. And if they don't cooperate, this won't work. So I had a meeting in my office in the Rayburn building with the Deputy Secretary of Defense, John Hamre, and the Deputy Director of the FBI and the CIA. And I handed them a 9-page proposal to create what we called the NOAH, NOAH, National Operation Analysis Hub, Policymaker and Warfighters Tool to deal with emerging transnational terrorist threats. Ray Downey had made this recommendation through the Gilmore Commission, and here I was offering it to implement it as the Vice Chairman of the Defense Committee. And John Hamre in the meeting said, it's a great idea, we need this. I said, I'll get it funded, because I'm the oversight chairman. The FBI said, it's a great idea and we'll support it. And the CIA said, we don't want it and we don't need it. We're doing something called CI-21. So 2 years before 9/11, the CIA rejected the solution that Louis Freeh, not me, Louis Freeh, our FBI director, said publicly in a Wall Street Journal editorial and on Good Morning America could have prevented 9/11 from happening. I felt responsible for the death of Ray Downey and the 343 firefighters and the 2,977 civilians and all the other people that died at 9/11 because I allowed CIA bureaucrats, unnamed, to push back on what everyone else said was needed.
So why would they?
When the 9/11 Commission made its recommendations, that was the biggest finding, that we did not have a fusion center of our intelligence. But the 9/11 Commission didn't go through the steps that we didn't take. They didn't want to cast any blame, and I'm a Republican, and that commission was done under George Bush Jr., and the commission was a cover-up, a complete cover-up. I'll say it publicly, and I'll back it up with my facts as I did on Tucker Carlson. They covered up what we knew before 9/11. They covered up what the Able Danger team found before 9/11. And I have 5 Able Danger team members, all career intelligence officers, Annapolis grad, Air Force intelligence officer, Army Lieutenant Colonel. All of them will testify. They tried to transfer the information 3 times before 9/11 to the Justice Department, and they were blocked all 3 times.
So
that's not in the 9/11 Commission report.
So question.
So they try to present the information that Louis Freeh said now, after 9/11, could have prevented the attack. So the big question is, why did they do that?
So
was that just stupidity? Was it arrogance? Or was there some plan that we don't know about?
Can I ask you a question?
That's why the big push right now, and why I'm doing this. Nobody's paying me a dime of money.
Okay.
1, I owe it to the firefighters of America and New York. And 2, I owe it to the people that died. We're asking Donald Trump to convene a 9/11 commission. This document is backed up by the families, the 3,000 architects and engineers, the firefighters, and all of those people who for over 20 years have been crying out that 9/11 Commission was a cover-up.
Sense is common sense.
Welcome to the CannaSense Total Wellness Collective. You're just a few simple clicks away from getting the cannabis products you want and have them delivered right to your home. So how does it work? Don't worry, it's easy. First, go to cannasense.com. click the Join Now button. Next, fill out the sponsorship form. If you don't have a sponsor, just type CanaSense in the field. Next, submit the form and wait for your welcome email. Once you receive your welcome email, log into your account. Click on Apothecary to see all of the available inventory. Choose your products, pay for your order, and track your package. Remember, delivery times vary by location.
The Richmond Gun Show is back this weekend at the Richmond Raceway Complex. 800 tables. Everything you need for the shooting sports and self-defense. Low gun show prices. Guns, ammo, knives, and more. Huge selection. Take a concealed carry class. The Richmond Gun Show at the Richmond Raceway Complex. 800 tables. Saturday 9 to 5, Sunday 10 to 5. More info, advanced tickets, and coupons at showmastersgunshows.com. That's showmastersgunshows.com.
Okay, all right.
So you were talking about the 9/11 Commission was a fake and fraud, and we're here live on Fire Show. Tell us about your experience and why would the CIA not support the issues that you were talking about?
Well, that's the ultimate question: is why back in 1999, in November the 4th, when I presented the plan to create the Fusion Center, why was the CIA so adamant about not supporting a Fusion Center when the FBI and the Defense Department was supportive and I was going to fund it as the chairman of the Oversight Committee? That's why you need a commission to look at that question. No one's ever inquired of the bureaucracy in the agency why that was done. The 9/11 Commission did not ask any of these questions. The 9/11 Commission, first of all, many of the recommendations of the 9/11 Commission had already been made by the Gilmore Commission. People don't even know what the Gilmore Commission is.
What's the Gilmore Commission?
The Gilmore Commission was created by my legislation after the 93 attack. The first attack on the Trade Center was in 1993, 8 years before 9/11.
Blind shake, right?
Yes, and I created with Ray Downey, the fire chief, whose jacket I'm wearing, who gave it to me. I created a law passed by the Congress to create a commission chaired by former Virginia Governor Jim Gilmore, a great man. That commission met and they issued 5 reports about what steps should be taken to prevent another attack. One of their recommendations was what I'm telling you, the creation of a fusion center of intelligence. None of that's in the 9/11 Commission report. None of that's in the commission report about me meeting with the Deputy Secretary of Defense and the agencies. That's not in the report. None of that recommendation is being told. So the people of America were given no information about what we knew beforehand. That Louis Freeh, not me, Louis Freeh, the director of the FBI, said publicly in a Wall Street Journal editorial and on Good Morning America could have prevented 9/11 from happening. That's wrong. We need to know why that was done and who did that. The problem is, and I said this earlier, if you do something wrong, you're going to be held accountable for it. If you drive your car and hit somebody and hurt them or kill them, you're going to go before a court. If I'm in Congress and I do something wrong, they're going to hold me accountable. Look at Menendez from New Jersey. He's in jail right now.
Yeah.
These people who prevented us from stopping 9/11, we don't even know who they are. They're hidden.
They're hidden.
And they got away with it
Yes.
until now.
I definitely agree with you. One of the people I've talked to, he's out of Pennsylvania. I'm not going to say his name, but he's this former CIA guy. And he said that the Bill Clinton administration stopped him and others from getting rid of Osama bin Laden.
Oh, that's
I'm sure you heard
absolutely
that.
true. That's absolutely true.
That they said they knew where he was at.
Absolutely.
At the time, they knew where at camps 2 or 3 times. It was Bill Clinton that stopped them from going in on the attack. And why would Bill Clinton stop? As president of the United States, I mean, the ships, the buildings that Osama bin Laden told you he bombed, why would they not attack and take out Osama bin Laden, especially in the 90s? That could have prevented 9/11.
That's an excellent question. And I have no respect for either Clinton. either Bill or Hillary. I was in the 90s. They were the ones that caused the problem we currently have with
You
Russia.
and Sandy Berger? I'm sure you don't like him.
Sandy Berger, I'll give you two stories about Sandy Berger.
Okay.
I did a 1-hour special order calling Sandy Berger a traitor and said that charges should be filed against him. The first one was in the 1990s, China was acquiring our most sensitive technology. So the Congress passed legislation and created a special commission. It was known as the Cox Commission because Chris Cox was the chairman. I was the only non-committee chairman placed on that commission by Newt Gingrich, Speaker. The 9 of us met behind closed doors with the FBI and the CIA and other agencies. And we issued our report after about 6 months. The report said that the security of America was severely harmed. The Democrats agreed with the Republicans. But I wanted Chris Cox to go the next step and show why it was harmed. And Chris didn't want to do that because he wanted a unanimous vote. So I had my friends, again in Intel, prepare charts. And I have those charts, and I will make them available to the public as I have in the past. Those charts show that in the mid-90s, China acquired our technology using funds from the People's Liberation Army to set up front companies. And those front companies made donations primarily to the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee.
Wow.
I'll give you one example.
Wow.
China did not have a technology that was important to send long-range missiles over to hit the U.S. They didn't have that. It's called multi-stage missiles. We have it. Russia has it. L'Oreal Corporation in California, for some reason, gave that technology to China in the mid-1990s, and they got caught. The Justice Department was about ready to indict their CEO for basically illegally transferring technology to China. That CEO was about to be indicted until Sandy Berger went to Clinton and arranged a retroactive presidential waiver.
Now, Sandy Berger was the National Security Advisor, U.S. National Security Advisor,
That's right.
right? Okay.
He arranged a retroactive presidential waiver for Bernie Schwartz. Bernie Schwartz was the CEO of L'Oreal. And that year he got the waiver, Bernie Schwartz became one of the biggest donors to the Democrat Party. I put all the donations in the congressional record. You can go get a copy of the record and you'll see the donations. The second thing that Sandy Berger did, Sandy Berger got caught. He was asked to testify before the 9/11 Commission. 2 weeks before he was to testify, he went into the National Archives, to the top floor, and he asked to see certain documents to refresh his memory. While he was in the archives, he stuffed the documents in his pants and his socks. It was a big story. You can read about it. It's in the news. So Sandy Berger stole national state secrets, critically important documents about what we knew about 9/11 beforehand that Sandy Berger didn't want known. He stole them.
Yeah, I remember that, watching the news. I think he got probation, 6 years
He
probation.
took them out of the archives, and he got a call from the Inspector General. Mr. Berger, did you take anything while you were looking at the archives? And he said, no, that's a felony. He lied to a federal agent. The Inspector General said, you better hire a legal counsel. He hired counsel, one of Clinton's crony friends. They cut a plea bargain.
Yeah.
Sandy Berger pled guilty to 11 felonies. 11 felonies.
11 felonies, wow.
Stealing 5 documents, destroying 5 documents, lying to a federal agent. He pled that down to 1 misdemeanor, no jail time.
And probation.
He lost a security clearance for 1 year, and when he left working for Clinton, he formed a company. The company is called Stonebridge.
Stonebridge, yeah.
And guess who Stonebridge represents?
Who?
All Chinese corporations.
Wow.
It's all fact.
So getting back, wow, that is some interesting information, and I think the viewers should really understand what's happening to America, what had happened to America during the Clinton years. Talk about the Bill Clinton and the raids that he stopped on Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden have taken out some ships, buildings. He did a number of threats on America and our American forces. Why would they stop? Why would Bill Clinton stop the attack on Osama bin Laden and taking him out?
That's part of what needs to be investigated, because in my case, when I talk about 9/11 or what I know, I only speak to what I know firsthand. And everything I tell you, I'll take a polygraph on. So I don't give my impressions or projections. What I know about Bill Clinton, I know firsthand. I was on the Cox Commission.
Yeah.
What I know about 9/11, I know because I was the chairman of the Oversight Committee for funding. What I know about 9/11, I was representing all the firefighters in America. So all the things that I know, I will take a polygraph. I don't know why Clinton would ever have his people, maybe he didn't even know, maybe it was done by the intelligence agency, not take out someone that was going to be such a threat to our security. Just like the second part of what I mentioned on Tucker Carlson's show was after 9/11, George Bush the Jr. went to the Trade Center, stood up on top of the debris and put his hands in the air and said, "We're going to get you. We're going to get you."
Yeah, I remember
As a
that.
patriotic American, I supported the president. I went over to Rome with two other members and Al Santoli, a decorated Vietnam vet. We met with the king of Afghanistan, who was living in exile in his family's home in Europe, and convinced him to go back to Afghanistan to bring all the tribes together to accept the American troops, so our troops would not be in danger from the Afghan people. And he did that. But while supporting George Bush sending our troops to Afghanistan, because that's where I was told that bin Laden was, I had established my own intel team of about 15 or 20 or 25 people that work for the agencies, the CIA, the DIA, the NSA, and others. And they would meet with me weekly and feed me raw data, because I couldn't trust the data I was getting as the vice chairman of the committee, because the agency would spin it. They would spin it the way they wanted it to appear, as opposed to being the raw data that I should get as a member.
Are you talking about the Bush administration?
The Bush 43, yes.
Bush 43.
I couldn't trust them. I couldn't trust them under Clinton or Bush 43. So they came to me, these people working for our agencies, and said, "Mr. Chairman, for some reason, our intelligence is showing that bin Laden is in a town called Ladiz." I didn't know where Ladiz was. So I walked up the street on Pennsylvania Avenue to a bookstore and I bought a map. I showed this map to Tucker Carlson. I found Ladiz. It's not in Afghanistan. It's not in Pakistan. Ladiz is inside of Iran. I went to the intelligence meeting of our committee. I was the acting chairman. So in front of 60 members of the committee, I asked a question. I have information that Osama bin Laden has been seen in a town called Ladiz. And the response by the agency briefers was, "Mr. Chairman, we've heard similar reports. We can either confirm or deny them." I was outraged.
Yeah, because that didn't make
Here was
sense.
my own CIA telling me that there was a possibility that bin Laden was in this town called Ladiz while we're sending kids to look for him in Afghanistan.
Yeah, that's kind of strange. If he's in Iran, you would send him and go get him in Iran, not in Afghanistan, not in Iraq. Yeah, it just amazes me that we're in that generation of the technology that we have, and if you're saying he is in Iran, go get him.
We knew where he was. The U.S. intelligence knew where he was.
So you're looking for weapons of mass destruction.
They knew where he was, and for some reason, he was allowed to be placed there with the knowledge of a handful of people from our intelligence agencies, and probably from our White House. I don't know that the president would have known this, but certainly people like Rumsfeld and Cheney would have known this.
So you're saying it was a setup, and 9/11 was set up by Intel, could be CIA.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the facts that I have regarding pre-9/11 intelligence and the location of bin Laden, I will verify that and I'll take a polygraph. and I have 10 silver bullets that I met with that will verify just what I told you. I can verify that.
So you're looking
I
at
can't tell you
the
what
deep state.
I can't tell you what the motive was. I can't tell you what unnamed people in our government were planning. I can tell you it scares me to death, and that's why the president needs to appoint a commission. We need to know the family of all those dead people, the family of Ray Downey, whose jacket I'm wearing, the family of Oriole Palmer, that battalion chief. They need to know. And until that happens, 9/11 is still going to be a scandal. We need a new commission, and we need a commission appointed by Trump.
So one of the things I was going to ask you is you talked about Muammar Gaddafi and Hillary Clinton. What was that all about? What was the real reason why they took out Gaddafi? Because like Gaddafi was following along with George Bush.
Well, that's why I went to Libya. My goal was to always try to avoid war. I come from a large family. I'm the youngest of 9 kids.
Okay.
My brother served in every branch of the services. My goal was to go to the Air Force Academy. I got the nomination, but I have bad eyes. They wouldn't give me a waiver. So I devoted my life to firefighters. And wherever I could go to prevent war, I went. I led the delegations to North Korea, to Russia, to Ukraine, to Afghanistan, to Iraq. And I went to Libya. I went to Libya because George Bush said publicly that Gaddafi's son was changing the country and that Gaddafi wanted to avoid war. So I was taking a delegation to meet our troops in Iraq on a military plane, and I said, we're going to stop in Tripoli on the way. We had no embassy there. We had no American staff there. We had no relationship with Libya. The White House tried to stop me. And as I usually did, I pushed them back. I said, I'm going to support the president. So we went to Libya for 2 nights. When we arrived there, they took us through the community, and the people overwhelmingly welcomed Americans. It was amazing. It was so warm and friendly. We walked the streets of the old town. We met Gaddafi on the last day there. Now, Gaddafi was very eccentric, and he always met in tents. So he came into this tent in this purple gown, and I had 6 members of Congress with me, and I said, Colonel, I said, we're here because our president has said that you want to achieve peace with us. I said, we're not here to negotiate with you. That's not our job. And I said, furthermore, we're not happy with you because you've admitted that you were involved in the destruction of Pan Am Flight 103 and the Lockerbie bombing. And we'll never forgive you for that. But if our president continues to say that you're following the path to peace, we want to help our president do that. And so that's why we're here. So we met. It was a very positive meeting, and he said to me, Congressman, and I met with him 2 other times. I took Joe Biden on my second trip. When I spoke to the entire nation, Joe Biden came with me. Condi Rice tried to stop Joe, but Joe came. I spoke to the entire nation. All 3 meetings with Gaddafi, this is what he said. He said, Congressman, my goal is to become the head of the African Union. And he did that. Unite all the African nations. And he said, I want to establish one African economy like Europe has. And I want to base our economy on the gold standard. In my opinion,
they didn't want that.
They did not want a unified Africa with the power of one economy that would stop the industrial nations from abusing the people of the African nations. That's my opinion based upon what I saw there.
Okay.
And what I heard, that's what Gaddafi said.
So, I was watching a documentary with Tony Blair, and Tony Blair tried to talk to Gaddafi and said, you need to get out of town. And
I went in during the war.
Yeah.
In 2011, I got a call from 2 people. One of them was President Biden's former staffer. He's a lawyer in Houston, Brian Ettinger. The other was his friend Steve Payne, who's one of George Bush Jr.'s close friends. And they both said to me, Congressman, Gaddafi's son contacted us. We know him, Saudi Gaddafi, and he wants you to go to Libya. I said, we're at war with Libya now. There's a war there. They said, well, Gaddafi wants to meet you, and he's ready to step aside, but he wants to talk to you. I talked to my former staffer of the committee in Washington. I said, notify the CIA that I'm thinking about going to Libya. They told him, I said, I don't want any money for this. All I want is somebody to buy me a plane ticket. I made those two staffers go with me, and I said, I know that the CIA will try to set me up. So I called a friend of mine, Larry Menti, who was a broadcaster in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I know Larry.
Larry was at the time up at the New York One station. I said, Larry, do you want to go to Libya with me? I explained. He said, yeah, I'll go. I took Larry Menti, a cameraman. I took Biden, and I took Bush's staffers, and we went into Libya. Mm-hmm. We met with Gaddafi's son in Libya. We met with Bashir Saleh, his top advisor.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister of Libya, Baghdadi Mahmoudi, and I hand-carried a letter back to the Tunisian embassy for Hillary Clinton and Obama. And the letter was Gaddafi's offer to resign, to step down. That letter was delivered. Why the U.S. didn't accept that?
They wanted to kill
I
him.
have no
Take him
idea.
out. We're going to go.
Well,
to
that's
a
what
station-
happened.
Yeah, we're going to go to a station break. We'll be right back. This is Daryl McKell Brooks of the On Fire Show with interviewing Representative Curt Weldon. We'll be right back.
Can of sense is common sense.
Welcome to the Canna Sense Total Wellness Collective. You're just a few simple clicks away from getting the cannabis products you want and have them delivered right to your home. So how does it work? Don't worry, it's easy. First, go to cannasense.com. Click the Join Now button. Next, fill out the sponsorship form. If you don't have a sponsor, just type CannaSense in the field. Next, submit the form and wait for your welcome email. Once you receive your welcome email, log into your account. Click on Apothecary to see all of the available inventory. Choose your products, pay for your order, and track your package. Remember, delivery times vary by location.
The Richmond Gun Show is back this weekend at the Richmond Raceway Complex. 800 tables. Everything you need for the shooting sports and self-defense. Low gun show prices. Guns, ammo, knives, and more. Huge selection. Take a concealed carry class. The Richmond Gun Show at the Richmond Raceway Complex. 800 tables. Saturday 9 to 5, Sunday 10 to 5. More info, advanced tickets, and coupons at showmastersgunshows.com. That's showmastersgunshows.com.
All right, we're back. This is Daryl McKell Brooks of the On Fire Show. You're here with Curt Weldon, the nation's gun show in Richmond. That's May 3rd and 4th, and cannasense.com. Check it out. Go check out the nation's gun show. You're back here with Representative Curt Weldon. 9/11, over 25 years ago, it could have been prevented. What was the biggest mistake of George Bush's administration dealing with 9/11?
It was basically, beforehand, we could have put into place the fusion center of all of our intelligence that would have given us the understanding of what was happening. They knew what needed to be done. I took those charts I had to the White House immediately when I got them on 9/11 and showed them to Steve Hadley. Steve Hadley was Condi Rice's top deputy. I rolled them out on his desk in the White House. I took two members with me, Dan Burton and Chris Shays from Connecticut. And Steve Hadley said, where did you get these charts from, Congressman? I said, Steve, I've been telling you since you took office in January that we needed a fusion center, like I told Clinton. And you didn't do it. And he said to me, I've got to show these charts to the man. I said, the man? He said, yes. I said, you mean the president? He said, yes. I said, you mean the president doesn't know about it? He said, that's right. We blew it. Now, the question is, why did we allow the CIA to block us from putting in place a capability that everyone now acknowledges, including Louis Freeh and everyone else, could have prevented 9/11? That's why, and I hate to keep saying this, Daryl, but the 9/11 Commission is so critically important. And I want to repeat that one story that I told, which we got interrupted on when we had the technical glitch. It's very important. The 9/11 story, it's not about a bunch of politicians or theories. And I'm a Republican, so I'm being very critical of the Bush administration.
So am I.
Obviously. But here's what this is about. when 9/11 happened, the fire department of New York responded like they do all the time, like firefighters all over the country do all the time. They risk their lives. They don't care who it is. They're going to go into a building. The battalion chief from New York, Oriole Palmer, took his group into the Trade Center tower. In the middle of the attack, right after the plane hit, took an elevator to the 40th floor. He had his communication system in his helmet so you can hear him speaking. He gets out of the elevator and you can hear him on the film called Bravo 7. And Daryl, I'll give the copy of this film to any viewer that contacts you for free.
Okay.
Or I'll give it to them directly. And you hear Oriole Palmer say, I'm battalion chief, I'm on the floor, 40th floor, we're going to walk up the rest of the way. As he walks up the stair towers, 45th, 50th, 60th floor, he says back on the comm system, carrying all this hose and these air packs, we're on the 60th floor. It's okay. We're going up. They reach the 78th floor, the floor of impact where the plane hit. You hear him as clear as you and I talking, get out of the stair tower. And he says to his commanding unit at the headquarters of the New York City Fire Department, he said, we're on the 78th floor, the floor of impact, where the plane hit. We've got 2 fires, and we can handle them. And 1 minute later, the entire building collapses. Daryl, that's what this is all about. Oriole Palmer's life was evaporated because somebody's lying. Ray Downey's life because somebody was lying. Those 2,977 people died because somebody's lying.
Yeah. And you have to, you can't forget the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, where over 5,000 American soldiers, close to 100,000 soldiers have committed suicide.
You're absolutely right. And as I said when I was on Tucker's show, we sent young American brave heroes to Afghanistan. And I supported that, to look for bin Laden. And then because of my committee assignment, I find out bin Laden's not in Afghanistan. He's being protected in an area called Baluchistan in Iran. So we're sending kids to die in Afghanistan when a handful of people in our country that are unnamed know where he is. I have 10 silver bullets. I won't go through all of them with you, Daryl, unless you want me to.
No, it's,
One of the most critical people that gave me information was the most respected Democrat member on defense issues in the House, Jack Murtha. Jack Murtha asked Ron Klink from Pittsburgh to meet with me. Ron's still alive. And he brought a knock-in from the agency. That knock is a person that works for the agency they'll never admit. I met with the guy because of Jack Murtha and Ron Klink. And the guy said, Congressman Weldon, I want you to help me get into Iran. I said, why do you want to go to Iran? He said, because that's where bin Laden is. I said, why would you say that? He said, that's where I work for the agency, and my friends are telling me he's in there. There's a $25 million reward for him. I want to go into Tehran. I'll leave my identity there in the hotel, and I'll go out and get him, and I'll bring him back dead or alive to get the reward. I have 10 people, 10 sources just like that, all separate. Bin Laden was in Iran.
Wow.
And people from the U.S. knew he was there.
25 years ago, 9/11.
And 2,500 American kids came home in body bags from Afghanistan.
That's a shame. Back to 9/11, the towers falling. We talk about there's this conspiracy. People were saying, especially some of my people want to ask you about the towers falling. About was there a bomb inside the towers, and how could building number 7 just fall when it wasn't hit by a plane?
That you asked the $64,000 question. That's why I suggest to your viewers and to you, and I'll give you a copy of it for nothing. The firefighters produced a film in 2020 called Bravo 7. It's very well done. It's over an hour long. That film shows all of the technical facts about Building 7 and the towers. You can watch that and you can draw your own conclusion. You'll see 24 views of Building 7 coming straight down. Even Donald Trump, and I'll give you the video. Donald Trump was a private citizen on 9/11, and he was interviewed by a TV station from New York, and I'll give you the video. And Donald Trump says on live TV, he says that building did not fall on its own. He said that building came down through controlled demolition. Donald Trump said that.
Controlled demolition. Wow.
Controlled demolition. Now, we have firefighters and we have people who have testified and given statements that they heard explosions in the buildings. There's no mention of that in the 9/11 Commission report. That needs to be investigated.
Why? Why was there's no mention of it in 9/11 Commission?
Just like there was no formal fire investigation. The firefighters for truth, who are not controlled by any political party, have stated publicly there was no formal fire investigation as to the use of high explosive materials that could have caused the buildings to collapse the way that you just don't have two buildings of that size just come straight down. And I was there. I was there the day after with the firefighters at Ground Zero. That doesn't happen.
So we're looking at
But,
we're looking at dark forces in America.
We get so overwhelmed with the media, and then they focus on, then they all want us to realize, the families, and that's important. But we ought to be focusing on, those people should never have died in the first place.
Yeah.
That's where the focus needs to be. So it never happens again.
Yes. Well, Representative Curt Weldon, we have a few guests that want to ask you a few questions. First, we're going to go with Annette Elliott. She is live. I think she's in Virginia. She is the owner of the Nation's Gun Show coming up in Richmond. Go ahead, Annette.
Hi, Representative Curt. It's Weldon. I want to praise you for continuing to expose what happened at 9/11. It's a really important, it's a very important thing to expose. A lot of people think it's just conspiracy theory and that kind of thing. I've not been read into it well enough to know what actually happened, but we know things like Operation Northwoods. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I cannot hear Curt very well at all. It's like just a whisper, but I really think it is great that you are trying to hold the government accountable for what happened.
Well, thank you. I've lived a long life. I've done it all. They ruined my family, ruined my daughter's life to take me out of office. My oldest son died a few years later because of what they did. I kept quiet because I couldn't trust any of the presidents from Bush through Obama, Biden, and Trump the first time because he wasn't in control. Trump this time took the right steps by removing the security clearances of 51 people. And I knew then I could start to talk. Now, what I'm talking about is not me alone. The people that I work with are all respected, credible leaders. Judge Gene Sullivan is a West Point grad. He's my closest friend. He was the chief oversight judge for the Pentagon, appointed by Ronald Reagan. Buck Revelle was the deputy director of the FBI in Dallas. Jim Woolsey, who endorsed my books, was a CIA director. I have given what I know to a bunch of people. So if they think they can shut me down by taking me out, they're wrong. I put all the facts down, I have all the documents down, and I have all the names down. It's about time that we held these unnamed scumbags accountable for what they do in the name of America. You can't get away with this. I couldn't get away with this, and they can't get away with this. What they do to these innocent people, firefighters and soldiers, is wrong, and it's got to stop.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and it is a huge bureaucracy. That's what we're witnessing. It's this huge bureaucracy doing all these things, and they are not held accountable. They're just not held accountable because there is no person at the top to keep them in check. So hopefully with Trump, like you said, maybe we'll get a whole lot of things. I think this is a time of exposure. I think it is a time of awakening for people to see what's been going on. I
Keep
really
pushing
do.
and get all your members, get all your friends,
time.
get all your friends to push for this presidential commission. Ask Donald Trump to convene this because that commission then can ask the questions that need to be asked. So I applaud for your interest and your leadership, and whatever you can do can be very helpful. That's why I agreed to appear on Daryl's show.
All right. Thank you, Annette. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
appreciate you having me on. And thank you so much, Representative Curt Weldon. And we really appreciate you.
All right. We
You're
got
welcome.
Representative Weldon. We got Lou Jasikoff in Factoryville, Pennsylvania. Go ahead, Lou.
Hey, Daryl, Congressman Weldon. Real quick here. A while back, we have the Independent
I'm not
Gazette.
hearing
We do a
anything.
lot of investigative journalism up here, Congressman. We were on the tip of the spear with Kids for Cash, Custody for Cash. But we also did an interview with Richard Gage, architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. And that interview was put on YouTube. And of course, we were banned and charged with terrorist threats and misinformation, and that's no longer on there. Have you seen a lot of this in your investigative work? People trying to expose or at least put information out about 9/11 and being whether it's threatened or whatever.
First of all, I want to applaud you. I'm well aware of the work that you are a part of. I'm well aware of Richard Gage, the architects and engineers, the lawyers, the families, the all the other people. You have kept the fire going for 24 years, and you've been laughed at. You've been called conspiracy theorists. And let me tell you this: I know the way the agency operates. They want the American people through the media to think that you don't know what's going on. The real conspiracy theorists are not across America. They're in the halls of the CIA headquarters. And they do this to try to spin the story for their benefit while not holding people accountable that commit the acts. I will say this to you, and I said this on Tucker Carlson's show. And this came to me in writing from a senior FBI official. Two of the terrorists in the 9/11 attack in New York were on the CIA payroll. Two of the terrorists in the 9/11 attack in New York were on the CIA payroll. That needs to be investigated. So what I say to you, you are the reason why we're still able to push this. Keep fighting. Don't give up. Keep spreading the word. Keep holding your elected officials accountable. Make them listen. It's beginning to work, I'm telling you right now. And with Donald Trump, we have a chance to get the facts as they really are.
All right. Thank you, Lou. All right. We got
Thank you,
Neil.
guys.
All right. We have Neil coming up. Neil, you got one more guest, Neil? All right,
Hey there,
Neil, you're on.
Congressman. First, thanks for having me on down. Second is it's very hard to hear Kurt speak from where we're sitting. So his responses are, if you could bring his volume up, that'd be awesome.
All right,
So,
go ahead, Neil.
Kurt, yeah, I just want to thank you for everything you're doing at this point. I mean, I'm a CPA by trade. I just finished up tax season. So,
Neil, can you hear me?
you
Neil?
are bring more light to the 9/11
Neil, I can see you. Can you hear me?
which of course a lot of people have questions on. So, I mean, do you believe that Trump will release the reports exposing these things that you're talking about?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm here. I can't hear Neil.
Go ahead, Neil. Neil.
You can't hear me at all?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. You can hear me, Daryl?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us, Neil?
Okay.
Go ahead and speak. Okay, we'll come back to Neil.
Kurt, I think I'm.
We want to come back to Neil.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Can you hear me or not? Because
Go ahead, Neil.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm in a bad spot. So you want to just I'll call in later, okay?
Okay. All right. Hello, Congressman Weldon.
I'm here.
Sorry about that. We had a little problem there. So
No problem.
let's talk about the Obama administration. And what was it like? I mean, was you were out in 2006, 2007. What was the response to the Obama administration, especially to Osama bin Laden, weapons of mass destruction, Afghanistan, Iraq war? What was it, his administration, and give me your feelings on his administration towards what
Well, I
we're
wasn't
trying to do
involved. I wasn't involved in Congress after
at that time.
2006, so I don't know all. And Biden, I offered to help him when he was vice president because I grew up. Biden's from Claymont, Delaware. He's not from Pennsylvania. He grew up in Claymont. His kids went to school with my kids. When my son died, Joe drove 3 hours from Washington and came unannounced and stood in line at my son's funeral. And Joe was always someone I worked with, so I never had feelings to Joe. But I offered to help Joe when Obama went in, but I got nothing in response. And in my opinion, Obama, he had done nothing as a senator, nothing. Imagine he goes in as president, he gets a Nobel Peace Prize for what? He hadn't done anything.
Yeah.
He did nothing in the Senate, and he gets a Nobel Peace Prize. And what? So I've never even met him. Just like I never met Trump. He's a nice man, but they get used. They get used by people that have an agenda. And how do they take care of them? They let them make money. Now, if you take everybody from Clinton to Bush Jr. to Obama to Biden, they all made tons of money. Now, when you're in elective office, you can't make money outside without getting approval. I'm still paying the mortgage on my house. How did Obama become $100 million person? How did he do that? How did Biden get to own 3 homes? How did Clinton become a multi-$100 million person? There are the questions the American people need to ask of both parties.
Yeah.
It's not one party, it's both parties.
It's both
We're
parties.
losing control of the government. And that's why they did not want Trump in. And again, I've never met Donald Trump. Never met him once. Donald Trump scared the crap out of them and still does because Donald Trump doesn't need them. Donald Trump doesn't even take money for being the president. He's a billionaire when he went in, and he'll be a billionaire when he leaves. They can't get him. And so they can't buy off Donald Trump. And that worries them all because now they're concerned they have a guy in power. That's why I said a year ago in May, I went on a TV station in the Philly area, and I said they're going to try to kill Trump. A month later, they try to kill him. He's at risk. Our country has got to wake up, and we've got to take control. And right now, we're not in control of the country, except Trump's giving us a chance, and we've got to help him take on what we call the deep state. And look, I'm a big supporter of intelligence. I worked with Jim Woolsey when I wrote my book in 2005, this book, Countdown to Terror.
Countdown to Terror.
Took on the CIA. Jim Woolsey endorsed this book. Jim Woolsey was the CIA director. He wrote a 3-page letter endorsing my book. I mean, every CIA director and George Bush, the father, was the former CIA director. He did a tribute to me. They took me out of office in 2006. They raided my daughter's house and never talked to her. 3 months later, George Bush, the father, does a tribute to me in front of 2,000 leaders in Washington. I'll put that tribute up against any other member of Congress and what he said about me. He said, Congressman Weldon, you've done this leadership for 20 years here. These people are here because of you. You're the kind of leader that America needs, that leaves the country safer and stronger. Those aren't my words. Those are George Bush Sr.'s words. You can Google it on the internet. It'll pop up. They tried to shut it down. They can't. I did my job. What I'm telling you right now is the deep state under Donald Trump needs to be cleansed.
So,
And that's what we have to support Donald Trump to do.
definitely. So, what was the difference you think of when he first got elected? And did you believe that he definitely was the best man for the job when he first got elected? What do you think the differences of Donald Trump then and Donald Trump now?
Donald Trump, when he was elected the first time, had no clue what he was getting in for. He was not a politician. He's a businessman. I met with Rudy Giuliani twice. I only had met Rudy when he helped me out on some issues of firefighters in the New York Fire Department. So I had private meeting with him twice in New York. I said, Rudy, they're going to try to undermine Trump from the beginning. That was in 2017. What did they do? They took out General Mike Flynn. Mike Flynn was a career intelligence officer for the military, very well respected. They took Flynn out before Trump even took office. So Trump was like a naked baby in the woods. He had no idea what they were doing. He had no idea about the intelligence community. He had no idea about what they were doing behind his back. And so for 4 years, they basically didn't do anything that he wanted. They basically set him up for failure.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when he was in the first 4 years, I knew I couldn't come out and say what I know. This time, Trump knows what he didn't know then. That's why the people he's put in are far more capable. Not that the people originally weren't capable, but they weren't willing to take on the fight. And there's no thanks for this. When you take on the system, nobody comes out and pats you on the back. You're not going to get a job. Nobody's going to pay you because you're bucking the system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem in our country, in both parties.
Have you heard from anything from the Trump administration about what you're planning? And I'm sure he watched the Tucker Carlson show, and others have watched it. I'm sure you at least got some phone calls, emails.
No, nothing from Trump, but I do know people around him. I sent some material to Susie Wiles back earlier in this year, offered to help. I've talked to Pete Hegseth. I knew him when he was at Fox. I've other people that know Trump. I've said, look, I have information that can help him. I wrote up a plan for the firefighters in the country that I want Trump to endorse, but I've not been able to succeed yet. He's surrounded by people that want to protect him, and I understand that. All I can do is say what I know, and then we'll see what happens.
Do you believe the assassination attempt there were 2 assassination attempts, one in Butler and the other one was in Mar-a-Lago, I believe, right, in Florida. What do you think about those things, and do you believe that there will probably be more attacks assassination attacks on President Trump?
Well, again, I'm not in office. I don't know the factual details about it. My suspicion is that it wasn't an accident, and that young person who did the assassination attempt in Butler, PA, was not acting alone. But we'll never know that because he's dead. What I suggested to my friends is Trump needs to be worried about his security. I still think he's at risk because if they take Trump out, all this comes to a stop. And I'm not against J.D. Vance, but he doesn't have the power. He doesn't have the understanding, doesn't have the stamina that Donald Trump has. So I'm worried about that. And that's why now it's important for us to take on the 9/11 story and speak out about it and attempt to have people, while Trump's in office, support him to get control of, we all want a safe country. I want a good intelligence system. We need it. Mm-hmm. I'm not against intelligence. I'm against people who use the intelligence agency for their own benefit. And in the process, American young people get killed, soldiers and firefighters and innocent people. And that's what my message is.
Okay.
I'm not against the intelligence agency. I'm against people that misuse it.
We'll be right back. We're going to a station break. We're going to talk about Iran next. We'll be right back. This is Daryl McKell-Brooks on the On Fire Show with retired Representative Curt Weldon.
The Richmond Gun Show is back this weekend at the
I've got
Richmond
about
Raceway
2 more minutes,
Complex. 800 tables. Everything you need for the shooting sports and self-defense. Low gun show prices. Guns, ammo, knives, and more. Huge selection. Take a concealed carry class. The Richmond Gun Show at the Richmond Raceway Complex. 800 tables. Saturday 9 to 5, Sunday 10 to 5. More info, advanced tickets, and coupons at showmastersgunshows.com. That's showmastersgunshows.com.
I've got about 10 more minutes.
Sense.com.
Can of sense is common sense.
Welcome to the CannaSense Total Wellness Collective. You're just a few simple clicks away from getting the cannabis products you want and have them delivered right to your home. So how does it work? Don't worry, it's easy. First, go to CannaSense.com. Click the Join Now button. Next, fill out the sponsorship form. If you don't have a sponsor, just type CannaSense in the field. Next, submit the form and wait for your welcome email. Once you receive your welcome email, log into your account. Click on Apothecary to see all of the available inventory. Choose your products, pay for your order, and track your package. Remember, delivery times vary by location.
Sense. Can of sense.
All right, we're back. Welcome to the On Fire Show with Representative Curt Weldon. Are you there?
I'm here.
All right, let's talk about Iran. It's a lot of talk about going in Iran. What is your thinking about going in Iran? I know your book and the Countdown to Terror. Should we go in Iran?
No, we should
And
not go to war.
And what would happen?
Well, war with Iran is only going to get American young people killed. Let me say this to you. The whole issue with Iran is over their nuclear program. And let me tell you what I did. And if people, I don't use social media, but I have a LinkedIn account. If they are on LinkedIn, they can go to my site and they can see this post that I did probably a year ago. I took two current senators, Lindsey Graham and Roger Wicker, when they were in the House. I took them to Russia because I had them meet with me and the head of the Russian nuclear program. The photograph in my post shows us meeting to try to convince the head of Russia's nuclear program to stop helping Iran build a nuclear weapon and stop them from finishing the Bushehr nuclear facility, which is the subject of all the work. This is going back almost 30 years ago. Now, I didn't get a good response from the head of their nuclear program. So the top nuclear scientist in Russia, Dr. Yevgeny Velikov, who worked with America on the Nunn-Lugar program, knew I was very upset over this. I said, Yevgeny, you cannot help Iran with a nuclear program because eventually that will cause a war that will involve you and us. He came to my office, and I have the details in my archives, which I'll provide. He came to my office and he said, Curt, he said, I've talked to President Putin. At the time, Velikov was head of Kurchatov Institute. He said, Putin has authorized me to offer to America a bilateral. A bilateral is equal, 50-50, between the U.S. and Iran, to oversee all fissile material going into Iran. Russia was willing to give us a veto over all the nuclear fissile material. We turned them down. We turned them down. I don't know the answer for that. All I can tell you is what I know. I can tell you that, and I have Yevgeny Velikov's interview on digitized. I have an oral history. We should not, and my book is about not going to war with Iran. The Iranian people are not our enemy. The games being played are with the intelligence, between our intelligence and Iranian intelligence. We have to find a way to get a solution with Iran that doesn't involve war. Several years ago, I talked to a professor at Princeton who is still up there, and he used to be involved with the Iranian Foreign Ministry. And I said, how about this for a solution? I said, if Iran wants to continue to have a nuclear program that doesn't involve weapons, why not have them hire one of America's largest nuclear companies, and I suggested Exelon, that has nuclear power plants, and have Iran contract with Exelon to manage their nuclear installations. Maybe that's a way to resolve the trust problem. Iran hires an American large corporation to oversee their because they want to have nuclear power for their energy needs. So there are solutions. I think Donald Trump is pursuing it, but war with Iran, in my opinion, is a mistake.
Yeah, definitely. I think that would be definitely a mistake. There are a lot of young, especially I talk to people in the Army, Air Force, Marines. I have friends everywhere, and they really don't want to go to war. And that was one of the problems that we had in 9/11. After that, war, Afghanistan, Iraq, and people are not ready to send their children off to a war, especially a war, weapons of mass destruction, for the war machine.
I lost you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, a lot of young people don't, I've talked to in the military, they don't want to go to war, especially for the war machine. And the money that was made over in Afghanistan, Iraq, and people see that now. Young people see it, families see it. So that would be devastating to American families if you ever went to a war in Iran.
War is never an answer. That doesn't mean we don't defend. I was my hero that when I ran for office was Ronald Reagan, and it was all about peace through strength. You build up a strong military and you deter aggression. That was my philosophy all through my 20 years in Congress.
So at the end, one question: what's next for Representative Curt Weldon?
Basically, to tell the story. I don't need money right now. I don't need to, I'm not looking to run for any office. I don't want any appointments. My story is all those people that died at 9/11 in Afghanistan and around the world that we could have prevented. And what I saw, I need to tell those stories. And I'm going to tell those stories until they either try to take me out. And if they take me out, all of your listeners will know why they did so. And I can't imagine people as a teacher, and I taught school in Delaware County and Darby, right near where you lived, near Southwest Philly. I taught school for 7 years. How can we justify killing innocent people? I mean, what bothered me when I was in Congress was I would be in conferences and they would say, well, accept casualties. No one's an acceptable casualty. You can't tell any parent their sons or daughters an acceptable casualty. Our job is to prevent war. That doesn't mean we give in to anybody, but it means we find ways to stop war. That's why I went to North Korea. We could have solved that problem with a peace pipeline. That's why I went to Libya. Gaddafi wanted peace. That's why I went to Russia, to Ukraine. We were all friends back then. All of these things could have been avoided. And at some point in time, we've got to wake up and understand if we don't take control of the people that are anonymous behind the system, it's going to get worse. And unfortunately, it could lead to a major world war. And that's unthinkable.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And like you said, we were friends. I just can't imagine, like, what happened? Why we were friends with everybody. All these individuals are now states, countries. And now we're talking about war. Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Ukraine, and eventually looking into China. And that's a sad state.
It's very sad, but I'm an optimist. And being a teacher, you're always an optimist. And being the youngest of 9 kids, I'm an optimist. Everybody has their responsibility. And the problem is when people say, oh, I don't have time for this, I can't do it. Well, then you have to bear the consequences of what's going to happen. If you want things to work right, you've got to become involved. Like you. You've got to make a difference.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to answer. And that means you're going to make mistakes because nobody's perfect. But we need people like you to ask the tough questions and to demand answers. And I applaud you for doing that.
Well, thank you for coming on. I am excited. I'm going to send this, we're going to send this show all around Facebook, YouTube, and definitely Tony Schaefer is going to get a copy of this. For those who are watching, this is Daryl McKelbrooks of the On Fire Show, and I have with me retired Representative Curt Weldon out of Pennsylvania. I thank you. I thank you for coming on. You're always welcome to come on the show.
Thank you,
Daryl.
Daryl.
We hope you lead a movement, a new 9/11 movement to change what is happening. And people should know, wake up. Presidential Commission on 9/11. That's important.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you.
That's important. Thank you. God bless America. God bless you all. This is Daryl McKell Brooks of the On Fire Show. Take care. See you next week.